Educating, informing, serving. Fact TV, keeping government honest.
You are watching a Fact TV presentation of the Village of Bellows Falls.
Well, being 6 o'clock, I'd like to call the Bellows Falls Village Trustee regular meeting on Tuesday, October 17th, 2023, 6 o'clock to order. And move on to approving the minutes of Tuesday, September 12th, 2023.
I'll move approval. I'll second.
Motion has been made and seconded. Is there any discussion? Hearing and seeing no discussion, all in favor would say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. And the motion carries. Are there any additions to the agenda for routine administrative matters and/or pressing matters that will require ratification at a future meeting? Anything to add to the agenda? Anybody?
No, the only thing is we will request an executive session for the end of the meeting,
Correct.
but that's it, nothing on the routine agenda.
Okay. Public comment on items not on the agenda. That's 3 minutes per person. Is there anything from the public?
I probably should speak on my issue.
You will, that's correct. You're on the agenda. Anything? If not, we'll move on to the manager's report.
Thank you. Couple items, and maybe Wade could update a couple things, but we did have the fire parade on Sunday and had another nice turnout. Lots of people showing up with all sorts of equipment, which is always great to see. The other thing is, if you've noticed, the new base that's on the firefighter memorial at the park in the downtown, the finishing pieces have come in. The department set it up, I think, a week ago Friday now.
No, it was last Friday.
Or last Friday. And so that's now pretty much complete. Looks great. If people get a chance to see it, it's really, it was a beautiful piece of art before, but now that it's finished, it's really something. It's spectacular. So that's been updated since we last spoke. We are in the process of collecting leaves, so folks, I know that we are in the fall and that's that time of the year, so people bag their leaves in their clear plastic bags. The guys are around in the trucks and we'll be picking them up. We'll continue on, I think, for roughly the next month with the leaf collection, so not that many have fallen, but at some point they will fall off the trees and be available for collection. So with that said, then we'll be preparing for winter. We actually changed the heat over in this building yesterday. It started malfunctioning today. We reset the boilers, which is good news. And so far they seem to be working. I'll let you know tomorrow how they're doing. So it's the joys of being in an old building and changing the season. So I apologize if folks might be a little uncomfortable tonight. We're still trying to adjust the temperatures. That was it.
Okay, and we'll move on to the agenda. Agenda item 1, consideration of the request for payment from Paul Reese.
So Paul is here, and I won't give too much of an introduction, but I just wanted to sort of give some background. There were a couple of occasions, I think, where Paul had spoken to me individually, and I think other members, about some of his questions and concerns. There was a point in time when he came to the office, Paul was in the office, and mentioned to Paul, if you put them in writing and file them as a Freedom of Information request, we will try to address whatever we can address. So that was the impetus for some of the paperwork that Paul submitted. That was back in September. We said, gave Paul an update as to everything we could find in the records that we were able to research. And then Paul submitted some additional information. So that sort of brings us, with all of that background, to where we are this evening. So since Paul's here, I thought maybe he might want to fill in other gaps.
Yeah, first of all, like you said, thank you for having me, and I apologize to 99% of the good law enforcement in the state of Vermont. But there's a problem, and a big problem. I'm in a legal battle up in Rutland right now with a law firm on one of your past village attorneys. I'm trying to track down some information on a stolen car. I have a sworn statement in August from a Cuda law firm. He immediately reported the car stolen to law enforcement agency. He sold 3 of them for scrap for $250, reported 1 stolen. As you saw, I went to the police department, nobody has any record, no log, every officer has not heard of this car being stolen. Well, it has been stolen. It was in the newspaper, it was reported stolen, the past town manager said she would look into it. I had an interest in buying it. Well, it's caused me a lot of stress. Last week, I actually called the sheriff department, I says, maybe you guys can find the car. My $4.5 million police department in 3 years can't find it. And I says, and I figured out what happened in 3 days. The sheriff department also gave me a runaround and said, gee, nothing we can do, contact the state police. And I says, well, we have a contract in Rockingham. Can I report a theft and you tell the state police and then tell local police? No. So I got so worked up with my post-traumatic stress disorder, I drove right to the state police and filed a sworn statement of a car being stolen by a Cuda law firm and myself 3 years ago. I had to meet with a social worker for a half an hour, shaken because it upset me. I'm supposed to call her tomorrow after this meeting to see if it gets resolved. I also turned around and had to make an appointment with a counselor, and it cost me $75 per session out of my pocket for an issue that is absolutely wrong. And I apologize to the good officers, but years ago when I was looking into this car, one of Bellows Falls officers in uniform pulls up to me laughing, and he says, Paul, it used to be a good community around here until the blacks moved in. Well, I have 20 African-American friends, and I'll tell you what, they didn't steal the car. And I don't think the NAACP would like me to tell that story Saturday at the Elks in Brattleboro. But what I'm saying is, there's been not just community policing, there's been some criminal policing. I have interviewed people, talked to people, where people have actually taken cash payments and let people go for drugs. In exchange for sex, let people go for drugs in this community. And the sheriff department needs to root out 1% too. So what I'm asking for is $1,000, more or less apology for this situation that's occurred. And I believe I can prove the facts, and I know who took the car. I have 5 witnesses that told me who took the car. It was a past employee, and it was the car it ran that you could start up and you could drive it away. And I believe actually probably the Attorney General's office helped cover this up. But it's an embarrassment to this community because I should be able, as a citizen that pays $1.5 million to trust my local police department, my sheriff department. I'm not impressed with either one of them. So hopefully we can resolve this, and the $1,000 I'd use for counseling. I would not pursue a federal lawsuit against this village, this police department, if we can resolve this in the right manner. If not, I will ask the state police to investigate the Bellows Falls Police Department, just like Tracy Shriver did in 2019. She requested, I think it was July 31, a criminal investigation into Bellows Falls Police. And I'm sorry to Chief Bamus, everybody else that's involved that are my friends, but they're caught in the middle, and justice is for all, because it's actually a felony over $300, and nobody gets charged. I have a friend that just went 1 night in jail for drinking, violation of his drinking. I have a friend spending 90 days in Tennessee jail. And auto theft, nothing happens. So that's my pitch.
So we've had a formal request from Paul that we would give him a payment of $1,000 for the work that he has done in the researching of the so-called stolen car. So at this time, I would entertain the motion whether we're going to pay that $1,000 or we're going to deny it. So at this point, I would entertain a motion.
I would recommend that we accept the manager's report on this item, which basically says that he has found no records or any other records that would indicate that the village had a payment due. And so I would accept the manager's report and make that a motion for the board.
I'll second it.
Okay. So we have a motion has been made that we would accept the manager's report, that we have basically done our research and in all reality, did not request that Paul do any of this research and therefore deny him the payment of the $1,000. Fair enough? Is that where you're headed?
Yep.
Can I
Been
just
seconded.
respond one thing? So if you're denying me, I will move ahead with the Vermont State Police to investigate the Bellows Falls Police Department for auto theft. That's fair enough.
I have one question on.
Sure.
I had to step out for a minute, but did you own the car?
I had
What's
an
the background?
interest, I went and looked at it 3 times, and 3 of them were totally junk, and everyone knew I came to a meeting, had an interest. So finally, I went up and looked at it again, and I says, you know what, I think I'm gonna offer $800. Well, the car disappeared. So I came back to Wendy Harris at a live meeting, and I says, Wendy, just jokingly, I says, I guess the car is stolen. I says, you know, it's gone. And she says, well, we did get a report that it's stolen. We're looking into it. And it came into the paper that way. So I immediately went, called the Kuda law firm, and Patrick Kuda said, Paul, I sold 3, and I told them, I immediately reported it stolen. So I says, oh, okay. So now I go to Bellows Falls Police Department, and Corporal Key comes out, and I said, Mike, I said, you guys find the stolen car? No, Paul, never even heard of it. He says, where'd you hear that? I says, a Kuda law firm. So he kind of laughed, and he went back into the department. And he sends out Chief Bemis, and Dave, I'm friends with Dave, and he says, geez, Paul, when did that happen? And I says, well, you know, Kuda law firm, and he says to me, he says, well, I'm not saying it didn't happen, but I got a report of it happening, and that's where it got interested. Because if Kuda reported it stolen, it should be on a police lot. I don't think he wants to lose his attorney license to lying to the Vermont Supreme Court Bar Association, but that was his statement in August. And I gave sworn 3 hours deposition up in Rutland Law Firm, and it's gonna get interesting. I mean, you actually could be facing, or the state of Vermont, a $3 million lawsuit. I thought $1,000 was fair, but that's where it might be going.
So we have a motion on the floor that we would deny this $1,000 payment. It's been seconded, following the manager's response to the Freedom of Information. Everyone ready for the vote? All those in favor of the motion would say aye. Aye. Opposed, no. The ayes have it, and we'll move on to item 2 on the agenda.
All right, thank you.
And this is review ordinance committee update, chapter 4, offense against person and property.
So the ordinance committee has been working for a period of time, looking at all of our village ordinances with recommended updates. So you can see that some of these are in blue in this particular section. I'm not asking you to do anything at this point to adopt. What I wanted to do is just bring it to your attention so that we can bring it forward to our attorney for a final review, and then we'll come back to you after that. If there are no other questions or concerns, for a public hearing and then ultimately adoption. We're going to be doing this with multiple chapters, so this will be coming to you in sort of pieces, but I thought that we would at least start with this one. This seemed to have the least amount of activity that we would need to look at, or any new changes in state law, or any other real significant scope changes in the ordinance itself. So
The
Yes,
The question I raised, I don't know if it's the next.
that's the next agenda item.
Yes,
The ROW, which is a resident-owned.
well, it's actually the right-of-way. So
Right.
that's where most of these, the concern is when people are leaving stuff in the right-of-way. How do we address some of those problems?
And I know from personal experience, I put something out, my wife he put something out in front of the house, it was gone in 15 minutes. And so I think the issue that I have is not that someone tries to offer this to somebody. It's that.
So I'm just gonna stop you,
Okay.
because I think that's item 3 on the
Okay.
agenda,
Sure.
and we're
Should
actually,
be added to this, though.
well,
That's-
I think we're gonna probably come
Okay.
back, so I think what we're doing right now is reviewing this part,
Yeah, okay,
of the change in the ordinances, and just that if there are any questions or concerns that we would have, we could pass those along to Scott right now.
Right,
Otherwise, it will go to legal, and then it will come back to us for final approval, is my understanding.
yes. We'll
So
have-
are there any questions,
I don't
comments?
have any.
Okay,
I'm good.
well, everybody good? Okay, so then we're gonna move on to item 3 on the agenda, discussion of items left in the public right of way. So go ahead, Jigs.
So like I said, I personally don't object to someone offering an item, but in some cases, there's stuff that left there for weeks and months, and I think we're going on a year in one property. And I think that we ought to cover that, because it's an eyesore. It's left there, and, you know, who knows what happens with it, what gets on it, what kind of animals are around or whatever. So it could be a public health issue, if not just an inconvenience to neighbors, et cetera. So I do think that we ought to have this ordinance committee address it, because, as I said, to bar it completely might not be the best thing, but you know, whether you give them a couple of days or whatever, it needs to be moved. So.
Right, I mean, the closest thing that, this is a town ordinance, and so I just wanted to highlight for the board's, for information, that the closest thing that we do that sort of addresses some of the concerns that Jigs has is talking about unkept lawns, right? Which is probably the vast majority of these. 99% of the time, if somebody is notified, they'll typically take care of it, and it goes, doesn't really go beyond that. People will comply. The issue with items left in the right of way is a little more complicated, as Jake says. Sometimes the stuff goes out and within a day it's gone. Sometimes it's furniture and it'll sit for a week, and we'll have to go and speak to people on the property, and eventually it does leave, but it can take a couple of weeks or more sometimes for people to be in compliance. In extreme cases, like Jake said, that's sort of a continual, they just keep sort of recycling some of the materials in the front, for lack of a better word. That's a different problem, and that probably needs some statutory updates to help with that in terms of enforcement. Because right now it's been really done by complaint. Most people comply. It's a little bit of a pain just to keep track of it and to follow up and to make sure that stuff is, that they do comply, but the vast majority of people do. And I guess really we're sort of now reaching that point where we have these constant problems in a few spots.
Does what Jigs is mentioning, would that even begin to fall under the health rules?
Well, I have the health officer do it just because he's out and about looking at things, and, he would do the same thing for grass, we go out and do ordinance. So it's no different, quite frankly. So when I get a complaint or a call like that, that's typically what we'll do. And most folks do comply. We have a few that aren't, for a variety of reasons. Some that we're pursuing legally, others that, we're probably gonna have to make some other changes here to sort of try to address, because they're just not gonna get covered through the zoning process that we're working through. So, but we could certainly make a recommendation to the town, take a hard look at this.
Okay.
And come back to you. So, the only other one that I think at some point we need to talk about, and it's something that the whole state has been addressing, are the issues of people that are loitering in public places, and loitering has a long definition and it's very legal, but the problem is that some people now are parking overnight and staying in their vehicles in some of our public parks. So down, across from the train station and living in vehicles for multiple days on end. They've had problems. The state has been very particular about how you approach people in these conditions, what you give them. Basically, it's like an appearance ticket to say, listen, you can't be here and, live in your car, and if you continue to live in your car, you could potentially then get ticketed and have to pay fines, but you can appeal this violation to some other board or another body, which can then decide if, in fact, you are creating a nuisance or creating a problem. You just can't go and basically kick people out of the parks, for example. They've been having a huge problem with this in Burlington. So they have a whole, basically, it's like a ticket book, but they give it to people and they tell them, you can't stay overnight here. You have to move along. They come back. If they haven't moved along, they have the right to appeal. And if they don't appeal, then they can pursue it and try to get people to move along. But it's a pretty involved process. We don't have anything like that in any of our current ordinances, either for the park and rides or for our public parks. It's something that we're probably going to have to look at in the town and the village, because it's becoming more and more of a practice. And I think it's something that we'll also have to address as we go forward.
Okay. Anything else on that issue? Okay, we'll move on to item 4, consideration for relief for a water leak issue at 50 Canal Street. We have
This is a copy of the bill, and then there's some information from the owner. Basically wrote it to Pam, because that's who they normally pay the bills. I brought it to the board's attention only because of the size of the amount that's being requested. In the past, most of the time, if somebody has a leak, we'll go out and, make sure that we repair the problem, whatever it might be, whether it's our problem or the owner's problem. And then we try to come up to some reasonable accommodation for the additional water that goes through the meter. And most of the time, if you relieve some of the sewer costs, people pay for the water, since the water did go through a meter. Most of the time, that resolves the problem. Typically, most of these that I resolve are not much more than $100 or $200. This one is significantly higher than that, so I wanted to bring it to the board's attention and have a conversation so that we were all on the same page, since this was a significantly higher amount than what I would normally deal with administratively. So, and you can see the explanation from the owner on the back of this request.
I'm assuming the issue's been fixed.
It has been.
yes,
It has been.
Jakes.
I've discovered on bills at my house that I've had a leaky faucet. It hasn't added up to this amount of money.
Right.
But I think having the manager having some discretion is the right way for our board to deal with it. I think clearly in a situation like this, waiving the sewer charges would be appropriate. I think we did use the water did flow, and I think that it's incumbent on property owners to take that seriously. And so again, I think the basic approach of waiving the sewer charges on something like this is appropriate. I think charging for the water is appropriate. But I also think that giving the manager some discretion is also appropriate. So anyway, that's my take.
But so you're saying, but you wouldn't waive the whole entire sewer portion because under any bill, there'd be a certain amount of that anyway. Am I thinking that through right, or am I missing something?
Well, typically on these, because it's a separate amount of charge, and since there was really no sewage treated, you would just look at the water as the item that should be paid for. That's typically the thought, right? If you have a broken pipe and the water's running, but it's not, you're not using the toilet, for example, it's just running. In this case, that's what was happening, and since there was nobody in the building, there was nobody that checked it or noticed it for a significant amount of time because it ran for quite a while. So most of these that I get are not anywhere close to this amount, and I don't even bring them to your attention because they're not significant enough to be of a concern. In this case, it's a little
So there's no other
heavier.
apartments in that building? Or
Well,
is this the bill just for that
this
one
is the
unit?
bill for this one particular,
For the one unit?
right,
Oh, okay. Well, that would make sense, then if there's nobody there, then
right.
certainly they're not.
So I guess I would entertain a motion to forgive the sewer part of the bill for 50 Canal Street.
Right, that would be my recommendation to the board. That would be my normal administrative procedure. And if the board wants to do a resolution of support, that would be great. So we're just all on the same page and we all can, understand what was happening.
I'll make that motion.
Second, okay. So the motion been made, seconded, that we would eliminate or forgive the sewer class 1 part of the bill for 50 Canal Street. Any other discussion? Hearing none, all in favor would say aye. Aye. Opposed, no. And the motion carries. We'll move on to item 5, update for ARPA projects.
So just a couple of items that we wanted to update since we last spoke about this, and I try to bring a little something to you every meeting just so you can see some of the progress. On the Lula lift itself, the variance request was approved. We just got that information today. So now we're in touch with a couple of different elevator companies to see what our potential cost might be for the repair. We think it'll be less than the amount that we have listed here. That was a conservative number. So I think that's some good news. We also have a group of folks from the Ridwig, and I think you might have gotten invitations from Gary that they're going to be coming and meeting here tomorrow and doing a community-based site visit and look at opportunities for infill development and parcels that are either underutilized or underdeveloped, or in some cases could be redeveloped into housing. The reason we brought that to the board's attention is we did potentially look at reserving some of our ARPA funds to help with some of these locations if they needed additional work prior to any kind of development work on the site. So that process is moving along, which we're happy to hear. We still have not gotten final updates on, we do have the $900,000 grant that we'd asked for from the Long Island Sound Futures Fund, and we have not heard from them. I contact them about every 3 weeks, and they have no idea of when they're going to do grant awards. And then we are on the intended use plan for the state. For next year would be $125,000 worth of engineering and design work, which would then go towards the $2.1 million worth of award under state funds for various projects at the sewage treatment plant, which we had talked about, the new bio-solid storage system, some floodproofing, some heat recapture, and one of the effluent units would have to get replaced as part of our 10-year capital plan. So that was good news. We're waiting to hear, again, what the final result might be on the 2 grants, and I hope to have some information, I would hope by the end of this year, on the Long Island Sound grants for sure. And we are past the public hearing stage now, so we're in the final 30-day window for approval of the state grants. So I should be getting some of the grant paperwork sometime in October or November, so that once we start the award process, then we can pretty much guarantee that we'll have our match money that we'll need to go forward with on these larger upgrades of the treatment plant. So with all of that being said, we have not done much more on any of the other items on this list. Ross is still moving ahead, and you've already committed funds to that. And talking with Marty, she is waiting on some NEPA some final NEPA work, which she has to complete before she can then submit all of her final plans for bidding, and then get a sense of what her total project costs are. So she's close, so I think that money will get earmarked and spent in the time period that we've talked about. And the 44 steps, we have not done any more work or any other further discussion on what might be involved in the larger repairs of that area. So I think for the next meeting, we'll dig into that in a little more detail. Gary had brought some information that he wanted to discuss, because we still have some additional funds. When you add up our totals, we still have some monies that are still outstanding that we have not even discussed about offsetting on the ARPA, on the original 880,000. So he handed out some information that he wanted to sort of work through. I'm not asking for anybody's specific approvals tonight. What I just wanted to do is bring this to your attention, bring it for your consideration, and then we'll bring it back to you at our next meeting, because we'll have some additional updates, I think, on some of these other numbers, and you might be in a better position to take a full look at this particular concern. So with all that as a little bit of a background, Gary, do you want to jump into the handout that we just
Sure. So in the ARPA community process, the #1 scoring item for the village was the transportation master plan connectivity. And I think when we were going through the original score sheet, I handed out kind of a long, complicated document that was the outline from a Better Connections grant. And so at this point, some work has been done with Walkable Rockingham in the downtown, and various groups, including our Historic Preservation Commission, Bellows Falls Historical Society, the Downtown Development Alliance, that all have brochures and walking tours. We had a meeting on brochures, design elements, consistency last week, including had some design folks like Charlie Hunter, Mary Lynch, and Elijah, who've done work and design all along, and feel like this is the boiled down waypoint connectivity proposal, what you have in front of you, and what we would get for $40,000 of ARPA funds is leveraging some rural business development technical assistance funds of $10,000 and a VORA implementation grant of $50,000. And so the initial piece what's in this proposal is continuing the work that was put together last week with the local groups on the design elements, so we could get those. They want to have one central place where anyone who's doing a brochure, some design element that connects it to Bellows Falls, Rockingham. So whether you're looking at a historic walking tour that's the village, or economic vitality downtown organization brochure and tour, they all have some similar design elements, so you know that they're Rockingham and Bellows Falls. So this would get those design pieces on the Google Drive first, and then identify what are all of the individual projects, where are all the, like all of the walking tours, the trails, intersections, biking trails that were, all of the work that's coming for in the future, like the walk bike plan would dovetail into this as well. So delineating the individual projects, putting a budget to them, cost, what would the cost be, and where would we get the funding sources? And then for each project, who's gonna carry it out and when, so that there's a triage of, which things we can do first, which ones are a year down the road, 5 years. And so that would be the middle section of this, and then the last piece of the ARPA funds, the last piece of this initial project would actually put some of the signage on the road in the downtown, get some of that wayfinding signage. So when a visitor comes into Bellows Falls and, I heard you had some walking tours, but where are they? How do I know that? They could see right in the kiosk out in front, scan a QR code, shows you where all of the walking tour brochures are. You can pull all of those up. And the implementation piece, both the USDA grant and the VORIC grant do that type of implementation of wayfinding websites. So we could actually build out that website, which could help us with some other pieces that we hear a lot about in terms of improving our website for the customer visitor facing side. So anyway, that's what's.
So I think a lot of these are supplemental and value adds. So we're not replacing the BDC brochures, for example. We're going to be able to supplement those and create a way that they're more accessible. Same for the historic walking tour. A lot of the information that's down at the Chamber of Commerce is a little bit's out of date. Some of it's really probably needs to be replaced. So it's consistent and it's also accessible. I think the QR code piece, as well as the Historical Society pieces, all the other pieces that tie together, this would be a way for us to pull all of that together and coordinate all that, not replace it, so they would still be responsible for maintaining their brochures and maintaining their existing outreaches, but we would, I think, make it more effective. And then certainly it helps us with our web design, as we've all talked about. We're trying to come up with ways to make our website function better on lots of levels, right? For the board, for visitors, for businesses, for our organizations. So this will help us build out some of that capacity so that we will be able to do some of these things online with a presence, as Gary said, that has an articulated theme that runs through it. So it looks like it's an official activity. It's not just a scatter shot of various inputs. So it fits, I think, with some of the things that the board has been looking at in terms of taking the ARPA funds and trying to leverage those funds as much as possible with other funds to get the biggest bang for your investment. So certainly this would also do that as well. So it's something that we wanted the board to take a look at, think about, and we come back with I think the next time that we're together, we'll talk about this in some more detail to see if that's something we might want to walk forward.
And so this, the website updates would be to the town's website. It wouldn't be a separate tourism website or anything. It would.
No, we think we're building it within the architecture and trying to improve the architecture we have now so that it's more interactive, more user-friendly. Yeah,
It's much needed updates.
Yeah, I'm not a web designer, so I'm hesitant to criticize, right? Because I'm really not that kind of person. But people that do that say that we need to do some things to make it better.
But I can say as a user, I'm not a web designer either, but as someone that needs to find information.
As a user, I'd say it needs some help.
Slacking, yeah.
Yeah, I would say that for sure. So, and not to criticize the people that put it together, and certainly, things have improved and changed, and I think this helps us move along to that too.
And this is a $40,000 ask, is that?
Yes.
I would like to make a motion to just spend this money, but I think we'll wait until the next meeting.
Yeah.
Because we've gone over and over and over. And
Right.
the biggest question that I have, like on this list, Scott.
Yep.
we've allocated, what, 115 to the,
Roughly 140 to Gross.
okay,
With
that's
the
already been done.
engineering
That's
and
done.
two different tranches for the actual
Okay, so
boiler.
that's done. And then
Correct.
we also did a 58,000, I think 58,000 is the contribution to the roof or something.
Right.
So we ought to show that as.
I will put that on there as
as
complete, just so that
committed.
it's,
So in
right.
other words, we've got the 140 and 58, or 198,000. So we're down to around 700,000 left.
Approximately, yeah.
Okay,
40.
so I think and you know, when you look at some of these things, like I said, I would just make a motion to do what you've got here tonight, but I won't, but
Right.
but I think the question I have is that if we say, let's take underutilized housing restoration.
Yes,
Let's say we put 100,000 there. And the ARPA funds have to be spent by whatever.
December 31st of
24.
2024.
correct.
Okay, so we've committed 100,000, and we come up to September of next year, and we haven't spent any of it. It seems to me that we need to have something such that
Right.
like if the 100 steps or the 44 steps,
Correct. I would say,
Okay.
Jigs, to be honest with
that
you,
it dumps into the, something that we will spend the money, is like the lift, the Lula lift, or
right,
the bio-solid
matching the
storage
grants,
update or
right.
something, just so that we don't lose
The money.
the money.
Usually in March, we start getting serious about doing our budget for May. And so I would say to the board, we will have, by March of next year, a very committed spending plan that we'll know, right? Every item on here, where it stands, and is it going to be expended within the December time period? And if not, then we'll make recommendations with the board's input as to adjustments to projects we know we can complete, because we're not gonna let any of this money expire, for sure.
All right, good. So
That's,
let's try to
Right.
make a vote next time.
So
Yeah,
I
Jeff
think
will
we'll
be-
hopefully have enough of the information. The lift has been sort of a great unknown, as it sat there without knowing if they were gonna give us the variance. Now we can get real pricing.
That's great.
So I can feel
Yeah.
more confident to a number that I can tell you.
Yep.
So,
Wade?
Actually, what was I gonna say? Lost my train of thought. One of the things, I will pass along a message about the Lula lift. Did the chief get hold of you?
I talked to him this
Like in the last 2
afternoon,
hours?
not in the last 2
So
hours.
one of the guys that's gonna look at the lift is gonna meet him at 7 o'clock
Is he? Okay,
tonight.
that's good.
So,
Yeah, he had reached out to some people because we were
Yeah.
anxious to get this thing
Yeah.
back to the board and try to get you some information, so.
oh, my other question was, I thought these funds had to be earmarked by the end of 2024 and the project's completed by 2026. Does 2026 have something to do with it? Or am I thinking
So
something
last
different?
there's a couple of different, they haven't really given us a definition yet, so I think for us, in order to feel satisfied, we want to make sure that we have our money spent by the end of '24. Some of the project work itself might extend out past that, but you'll expend the money.
Okay.
So, for example, if we're doing stuff at the sewage treatment plant, we'll be working on that well into '24 and '25, but we'll
Right.
spend that ARPA money early so that it's done.
Done, yeah.
Correct. And then I
Right,
think they want to see all the projects wrapped up by '26, whatever you're doing, I think is the idea. Yeah,
Yeah, I agree with that feeling of urgency, Jigs. I'm curious details on, I must have missed stuff for tomorrow with that site visit. Not sure if something you're able to just send along, or if it's a quick
I know-
meeting here at what time?
1 o'clock.
it's 1 o'clock, it's a group that's coming, right. And they're
Is
doing
this the
some,
Reddit?
Yeah.
It's part of the Redwig, and they're doing some field work. They've got some sites that they're gonna go and check out and try to target specific locations with the idea that they could redevelop these properties, bring them back into productive use. So, and that $150,000 is literally just a number. It has no bearing in any kind of analysis or any kind
Right.
of real.
Right.
So I think, that's one of the ones we're hoping to get better information to the board about, so you can feel more comfortable with what we're asking to do. So,
Anything else? If not, we'll move on to item 6, the police server project update.
this is another one of those projects that we've talked about a few times. At least now, we do have the camera piece. If you remember, we had applied for some grants, got some funding. We had moved some capital money around, the board had approved. So they are coming to do that portion of the work at the end of this month. So that's the good news. The next piece of this is the existing server. We have to do a substantial amount of data migration and other work to preserve the data that's on that server that's failing, so that it can be accessed by a computer, and then we are going to then drop that actual server off of our inventory. So it sounds a little bit convoluted, but I gave you some additional documentation just for a sense of where it stands. It's about 97% full, all of those, the server itself. So it's functioning in a very, it's basically stuffed full of data. And the concern is, right now, it's not always backing up appropriately. And at some point, if those disks fail, it'd be a mess for us to try to recapture some of that lost data, which the concern is, because some of that is related to police cases and we're required to maintain that data, we could have some sort of issues with our long-term support for cases that are still not completed, that, the police are still actively needing that data so that somebody can use it in a legal proceeding. So we want to get rid of this server. I think it's important that we get this next step of the project moving in November, once the cameras are in, because once those cameras are in, the old system is off completely. The data on that new system, as we talked about, goes up to the cloud. And then what we want to maintain, if there's a prisoner and we have to maintain that information for future cases, or if there's another activity that we want to maintain that's case related, all of that's maintained in the cloud, and the storage for that is basically forever. So the replacement cost of this server, if we were going to buy a new one and just try to replace the existing one, would be about $50,000. Not exactly a great investment for the board, considering these servers now, they're only giving you an estimated useful life of about 5 years, which is hard for me to fathom, but that's what they're doing. So this one, if we do this next phase, it's about $20,000 worth of work. We'll bring that server basically to the point where we can decommission it and just take it away, that it's gone. So the data is accessible. It's accessible on a system, a backed up system that you can access through a PC. The server itself is gone. The new data coming through the new cameras goes up to the cloud, and that problem is resolved. And at the end of the day, we've saved ourselves substantial money in the current funding cycle, as well as future funding if we have to continue to replace that server going forward. So I think it's a good investment for us to keep this project moving along.
So I guess I'd entertain a motion to appropriate $20,000.
Right, we'd actually put some money into the budget for this migration. I just wanted the board.
Oh, okay.
I don't know if we need to do a specific appropriation resolution, since we've already put money in the budget. I just want to make you aware of it, because it's going to be coming on some of your bills and warrants, and I didn't want you to be taken by surprise as to what it was and what the purpose was. So it's really a lot more background.
Perfect, thank you.
On the financial statement, page 5 of the general fund, under fire equipment, it's there's a radio new and repair of 9,300. That's a different thing, right?
That's a different thing.
Okay, so this one, this 9397 hasn't hit the book yet.
No, they just went up and did some of the work on Fall Mountain last week,
Okay.
actually.
And that will be in the police fire building account, will it?
Well, there's gonna be, remember, we had the radio grant,
Yeah.
so we had the 50,000, which we offset with then
Oh, yeah.
highway, police, and fire. So there'll be some allocations, Jigs, but we'll make sure we point those out, so when we get into the budget down the road, everybody sees where those things hit. Yep.
Anything else on item 6?
So you don't need a motion on this thing? 'cause-
No, I just wanted to give everybody an update, just because it's been going on for so long, and there's so many pieces to it.
Yeah.
And you will see some additional costs now coming in. I just want to make sure everybody's up to speed.
They will move on to item 7, financials.
So a couple things that wanted to bring to the board's attention, I think Alyssa's on, so she can jump in too. Jigs had asked at the last meeting if we could keep track and just keep the board aware of where we stand on a couple of our larger receivables, one of those being the North Westminster District. And just to give the board an update on some of that activity, the clerk who had been doing the billing for the district resigned. So before she resigned, we did get a hold of her computer, so we have her physical PC as well as all of the backed up QuickBooks information that she had used for her billing. We have access to her financial, to her banks and to some of their other statements. And also have been in touch with chair of the current district group, who's also aware of the situation, what we're doing, and basically let him know that we're going to work, and Alyssa's already started trying to put together where we stand on the current accounts, as much of the history, and again, we can only verify what's in this computer and what we've billed, so we know what we billed, so I feel pretty confident in what our records are. The records of what was billed and received through the district is not as reliable. So at some point, we will reach, basically on each account, whether they're current, whether they're past due, or whether there's another problem with that account, at which point we will then have a meeting with the district, the board, which still has a board. They have not met, but they are still a board. And then a meeting in Westminster to let them know that these are the amounts that are on the accounts, and that there will have to be a lien assessed against the past due amounts. And that, according to the discussions I've had with our attorney, will have to go through Westminster. They'll have to put those liens, so we will prepare them. They will have to file them. And then the second act that the attorney is working on is an update to the existing agreement, so that we would then have the ability to bill those people directly, much like we do the other districts. So there'll have to be a modification to the existing agreement, which he is working on the draft for that. So multiple steps involved. I anticipate some folks won't be real happy with some of the outcomes. Not much we can do about that. Is do the best we can with trying to match up what we know, that one complete billing cycle of the 20, of the bills that we've presented to them was never billed back to the people in the district. We know that one for a fact. But they're still past due. Alyssa, how much were they past due when we talked this afternoon? I'm drawing a blank on the number. She's on, but
Are you talking about, which are you talking about now?
they just, what North Westminster District.
We didn't talk about that earlier. We talked about Best Septic.
Well, Best Septic is a
So,
separate station.
yeah.
Right.
I think they're behind 2 complete billing cycles plus the one that she didn't even bill.
So 2 bills, at the end of this month, they'll be behind 2 of the $23,000 billing cycles plus the one that she didn't bill. So that's roughly $23,000 per cycle. That's gonna be close to $69,000-70,000 roughly. And I think that she did provide a payment when she did give us all the checking and all the account information, about 18,000.
Yes.
Right. So we had received one payment to offset some of the past due of 18,000. So we're looking at a fairly substantial amount of past due on that particular district. On the Best Septic, they did maintain their payments for September. We did bill October, if I'm correct, Alyssa, we billed
Yes.
them 21,000 roughly.
Yep.
So that bill has gone out as a receivable. So then this month they will owe us that 21,000, which is the amount they were billed for the septage that they dumped in September, or whether they dumped in September, plus the $10,000 catch-up. So they'll owe us 31,000 in order to continue with the agreement that that we had discussed with them about catching up on their past due.
Scott, I can't hear Elizabeth, hopefully
I
she
know.
can hear
No,
us.
I think, can you hear Jigs?
Yes, I can hear you.
Okay. We're not
Okay.
getting it through the owls very well, but anyway.
When we brought this up in September, the receivable in the wastewater fund was 134,000, and Best Septic and Northwest Minister were the two biggies in
Right.
that. The balance sheet that we just got dated October 12th, that receivable is up to $243,000. It's up over $100,000. And you've just reported that Northwest Minister made some payment and Best Septic made some payment. But, my concern is now heightened as to what is the 243,000? I mean, I think what I'd like to have you send the board, maybe by email, is a list of the receivables as of October 10th or 12th. It adds up to the $243,000. I expected to see that number go down. What's also, the board should also take note is that if you look at that September statement, our due two other accounts for the wastewater was at 26,000. That's how much we were short of cash. On the October 12th statement, we're 445,000. So this is a cash flow thing. Don't confuse it with income or expenses, but
Right.
The timing of some of our debt service payments are loaded in the front end and all of that. But it's a big part of that. 243,000 of that 445,000 is these receivables. And as I said, the fact that they're up 100,000 is really alarming to me.
Jigs, I pulled up the detail, and I say detail, it doesn't really give me too much detail, but we just billed somebody $77,000, so that looks like it's a completely new addition.
77, that's not either Best Septic or the Northwest Minster District?
Yeah, and I'm pulling it up right now in the accounts receivable to get a better picture for you.
Okay.
I didn't get it.
Yeah, sorry, what'd you say?
So she's looking at the accounts receivable detail right now. There was one large number that was added to this current cycle of 77,000. but that was not related to either the problems that we talked about with North Westminster or the septic. So I think she's trying to figure out what that 77,000 was in the accounting detail.
Well, like I said, we're not gonna resolve it tonight, but if we could
We
get
can get
a
you the
list of
detail
these
for that.
receivables. And I think that, I'm assuming that the word is out at the sewer treatment plant that, you know, if you dump in September, you pay in October. There's no such thing as extended terms or anything. I mean, it's.
Right.
You know, obviously, we've let that slip, and this is kind of alarming. What the other 77,000 would be, I can't imagine.
No, we can dig into that and give you some of that detail, and we'll share that with you.
Anything else on financials?
Well, there's the usual kind of questions on some of the numbers. You know, receipts from interest and penalties are low. The fire and police revenues are really low. You know, whether those will pick up or not. For the general fund, page 2, the village manager account seems to be, unless, I mean, like, if you look down under finance office, you'll see an entry for resource manager or whatever. And up under the managers, you've got resource manager, which hasn't had any expenditure.
Any expense,
so,
right.
you know, I think you know, whether that's a miscoding or whatever. Some of the, you know, you look at the salary accounts, we're a little over a quarter into the new year. So we would be between 25 and 30% of the salary account if you're on budget.
Yeah.
You know, assuming October's already had a pay period. And, you know, you look at the finance staff and we're at 38.6%. You say, well, that seems high. But again, it could be coding. On the third page, the software support for NIMRIC, we've spent a little more than the annual budget. So I don't know what that is, but
Okay.
Well, we've paid our yearly support to them,
things
so
like,
that could just be an
further
increase.
down under employee benefits, where FICA's at 60% of the annual budget. So it's something that's, we don't have that many employees,
Right.
so it's hard to. We show an insurance deductible. I didn't know that we had an insurance claim. I guess we show on page 4 the top that
We paid one claim, I think, for a police vehicle, if I'm not mistaken, where we hit a car. I think that's the only thing that we've done, Jigs, that I'm aware of.
So we use the deductible.
We use the deductible, right.
Okay, so there is an insurance claim, I guess.
Correct.
Yeah.
There's a couple insurance claims.
Then under fire department, under the salary account, it shows maintenance of $1,200, and I was wondering what that was.
So we have been using an extra person in their building to do some additional work in the building. So I think they've been charging some of that expense to that maintenance account.
What kind of work? I mean, is it?
Some of the things that we couldn't get to So like last year, for example, when we had the lift, and we did some of the ceilings and painted some of the areas inside the building, because we had ordered a lift to do some other work. They're doing those types of projects. We're also doing some work with replacing some of the carpeting and some of the other floors, and then when we did that, we had to do some other work around painting and some other repairs. So it's that type of work, just the general wear and tear in the building.
I just think that the question of putting it under the fire department salaries as opposed to the building expense
I mean, we could certainly look at making,
it would be the question. I think,
Okay.
you know, the fire salary account ought to be what we pay the firemen.
Right.
Type of thing. And,
yep,
on page 5, we do show the radio expense. We knew we were going to be over budget on that, I think. I'm pretty sure we knew
right.
we would take that hit because we've got the surplus. So. Under the police officer expenses on page 6, we show a computer / equipment of 1,600. I don't know what that is. Nothing was budgeted there. But,
Okay.
and then under the police equipment purchase and repair, we show 23,000. I didn't think we bought a vehicle since.
No, I don't think it was a vehicle that was in there.
And we have a vehicle reserve. So that when we do buy a vehicle, you charge it to the reserve, but I don't know what that 23,000 could possibly be. It's under equipment.
Yeah, I see it. Yeah, I don't remember off the top
Now,
of my
whether
head.
that's, again, part of this, you know, the $100,000.
The radio.
Those are the payments to the Motorola
That's the radios?
heaters.
Okay. It's part of the radio
Part of
project.
the police part of the radios.
Right.
And was the fire department, the fire part of the radios?
I think that's part of it.
That's part of that for the radios for the fire,
Right.
yes.
Yep.
Okay. All right. Okay, so that answers that. And we knew we were gonna be.
Right.
A little bit heavy on some of that,
You know,
correct.
heavy on those things, for those things. But we do show on page 7, you can see that we've already transferred the funds to the reserves, you know, for both the police chief vehicle, the capital fund,
Mhm.
and the police vehicle transfer. So
Right.
That police chief,
Yeah,
on that, the one you just mentioned, police chief, isn't that supposed to be fire department?
Yes, it is.
She said yes. It's supposed to be
which
fire.
one?
The very top one that you just
So
mentioned?
under capital, it should be fire chief vehicle, not. police
Fire
chief.
chief, not police
Correct.
chief.
It's just
Yeah.
titled wrong, right?
So
Anything
there's a
else?
couple of those things that require some follow-up.
Yep.
But,
Definitely. Okay.
the water fund looked pretty good. I think with the added employee there, we were gonna do some additional work, I think.
Well, we're getting an offset from that lead line inventory, and the last thing, we were just going over that this week with Brian and Alyssa. They're gonna end up paying you $55 per line, if I remember correctly, and we were gonna have roughly 1,600 lines eventually, that we were going to go out and have to include in that database. So that'll be the reimbursement for that. I think we had put $100,000 potentially as an income source for that in the budget. I don't think we'll spend all that, just because of the number of lines that we're actually researching. So we'll be close, but I don't think we'll get to the full 100. And that, I think, we're gonna be done. Brian told us that he was down to, I think, 150 or 60 lines to go, something along those lines. So it sounds like we're closer to the end on that one. So we'll be able to submit for the reimbursement. It's just a, one-time submission, you get the money, and that's that. So you'll see that at some point. But definitely within this budget year.
On the sewer fund, page 1 of the sewer fund, under Saxon's River, I'm pleased to see that they paid us $136,000, but somehow I doubt it. I know when we looked at receivables the last time, they were delinquent. But our annual budget is $68,000. It shows having received $136,000. Saxon's River.
I think they were past due, plus I think they also paid the current, if I'm not mistaken, Jake, but I'll double check that, right?
Check that, yeah.
Yep.
It looks like the septic is on budget. We're 3 months into the year, and or 4 months, 3 months into the year. And we're at 32% of the budget, so. This is another one on page 2 of that account, on the salary account, water personnel, we're at 36% of the salaries. And
You mean wastewater or real water?
wastewater.
Okay, yeah.
And, everybody else is around 30%, so except for the finance office. So I don't know what's going on there, but.
Well, we did have somebody out on long-term medical, so we were paying for some additional, but Rob's back, so. But anyway, we'll double check to see if there's something else we want against that.
On the page 3, the top there, the sewer line, the $36,000 item. Is that what we were talking about, getting reimbursed on, or? We had budgeted 1,000, and we're expensed 36,000. The sewer line flushing,
Right.
that's a seasonal thing, but that's.
Right. I know that we had done a couple of repairs, but there was something specific in there, Jigs. I don't know if we actually charged some of the overhead from the, some of the street paving because of all the new, raising all of the structures, but I'll double check to see if that's part of that too.
I thought,
Because we charge water and sewer for some of that as well as part of the paving.
Yeah.
so I was thinking it was part of that, a big chunk of that was when they had the sewer line break over here. But maybe that was in the previous budget.
Yeah, I don't think that's all, yeah, I don't think so, but I'll double check that. It's possible, but I don't think so. Right.
Is
That it?
that's it. As I said, the account is now borrowed to the tune of $450,000. So it's,
Yeah, we'll follow up with an email on some of these items so the board gets an updated picture.
thank you.
Any other questions on financials? How about review agenda items for our next meeting, which is November 14th, 2023?
We'll have some of the updated ARPA on there for sure. Hopefully by then we'll have had the legal follow-up on the first round of our ordinance reviews. So we can talk about setting a public hearing. Trying to think, there was something else that I was going to put on there, and now I'm drawing a blank.
Anything
We
from
should
the
talk
board?
about the receivables in the sewer.
I'll add that again.
Really go through that.
Yep. Yep.
Anything else?
Not off the top of my head right now.
Okay.
Yep.
Review agenda items for the joint board meeting, which is November 28th, 2023.
We're hoping to have at least the first piece of the review for the fire feasibility study, and I'll be sending out to members this week a survey from the project team from AP Triton to each of the elected boards. So it's just a survey monkey, so it'll be a link, and it's just something that they're asking each of the elected officials as well as department members to fill out so they can gather some additional information. It's confidential, so who they get the information from, it's not published to say, okay, this was, your responses and this was my responses. It's just another tool for them. So that'll be coming out to you this week.
I don't have an email with, at BF Brock or whatever.
I'll have to send it to the normal, that I normally send to, for you. So,
Anything else from anybody on that? If not, we'll move on to review and approve orders, bills, and warrants.
So moved.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Motion been made, seconded, that we will review and approve orders, bills, and warrants. All in favor would say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. Motion will carry. Other business. One thing I want to remind this board is that we do have a BCA meeting on tax abatement on next Tuesday, 10/24 at 5:15 p.m. And I know there are a few village properties in there that we will be talking about going over abatement.
What time's that? 5:15?
Quarter after 5, 15 minutes per
Yeah.
case, and I think it's 7 cases, 7 abatements.
We got information on 3 of them today, I think.
I think you should get all of them.
Okay, because I only saw 3.
Okay, right after the meeting, we could, because I have hard copy of the whole thing, so. Any other business, Wade,
I can't think of anything.
Connor,
I think we're good.
Jigs,
No, I'm good.
anybody? Okay.
Jakes,
oh, Kathleen had a question.
Oh, yes.
Kathleen.
Jake, I just wanted to tell Jakes, one of those emails had like 5 attachments to it. So one of the emails, I think, was for 5. I had to send it in 3 different.
Okay.
Okay,
That could be
he's gonna
6.
check. Okay, thank you,
Thanks,
Kathleen.
Kathleen.
Yep,
At this time, I would entertain a motion to go into executive session.
I move to find that premature general public knowledge would place the municipality at a substantial disadvantage as we discuss a contract matter.
I'll second it.
Motion been made, seconded. Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor would say aye.
Aye. And I move that the board enter executive session to discuss contract matter under provisions of Title I, Section 313A1 of the Vermont statutes, and invite
Good night, guys.
the municipal manager to participate.
Second? Is there a second?
Second?
Motion been made, seconded. Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor would say aye.
Aye.